Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ayman Mousawi. I'm the director of the Design Department in Ministry of Public Works in Kuwait. I would like to thank AU University for giving me the chance to share our experience in Ministry of Public Works into implementing BIM into our projects. Just a quick overall agenda for today. I will give a brief hint of our projects in Ministry of Public Works, and then I'll speak about adopting BIM, what's the benefits of adopting BIM into our projects, and then finally we're going to speak about our implementation plan and mandate for BIM. First of all, what is the role of Ministry of Public Works? We do design and construct projects for governmental entities. Some people call us the contractor of the government. So any governmental entity needs a building, say the Minister of Health needs a hospital, so they reach us, we'll do the study, design, construct of this building or the hospital, and hand it over to the end user so they can they can operate it. We consider ourselves, we have an influential role into the industry, the engineering industry in Kuwait. Why we do that? Because the amount of projects, quantity-wise, quality-wise, financial, the size of the projects that we do, we think any new technology we adopt could influence the industry in Kuwait. For example, a couple of years ago, we started to implement smart buildings. And now I think all of our projects are smart. Before that, we speak about green buildings and renewable energy. And now all of our projects are green. Today, we are introducing and actually implementing BIM to our project. Right now, in Ministry of Public Works, in the project construction section only, we have more than 43 active projects. Projects with a total amount of budget around exceeding 3.8 billion US dollars. Some of our projects is the Sheikh Jabir Al Ahmed Al Sabah Hospital. It's already constructed and it's in the turning over the project to the end user so they can operate it. It is the biggest hospital in the Middle East. It could take up to more than 1,100 beds. It's a general hospital. Another prestigious project we have is the Ministry of Education headquarters. We just finished constructing this project, and the budget is exceeding 250 million US dollars. It's a huge project, headquarters for Ministry of Public Works. Both projects already finished constructing and both in the handing over procedure to the end user. Another project in the design right now, this is in the design stage. This is the children's hospital. We consider it to be the biggest children's hospital in the world. It will take up to 800 beds. And by the way, this is one of the projects that has been designed using BIM. So those were some of our projects. Of course, I'm not going to spend the time for explaining 43 projects right now. Now, what's the benefit for us to start to implement BIM to our projects? First of all, reduce design iterations. I've been the director of the design department for almost 10 years now. The most common question or RFI, request for information, coming to me from sites is, well, design people, we find clashes between documents, sometimes between drawings itself, like the one we have on your right-hand side, a main duct clashing with a beam. This is a common problem we always face in the design department, or sometimes between different contract documents, sometimes between specifications and drawings, something written in the specification and it is something else in the drawings or need more explanation. So that could result into asking variations, and these variations could be time variations or even financial variations. And we're trying to avoid obviously any variation orders during construction. So using BIM, adopting BIM will help us to have a clash-free project, or at least to reduce number of clashes between the documents. Another benefits is they improve the coordination. Having a huge buildings like hospitals, airport terminals, it has a lot of utilities and services. So all these utilities and services should be designed accordingly, and making sure there's no clashes between these services, and the contractor could take the drawings and construct it in the site without having any problems, because any problem at that stage of work, again, it's a variation order. Then having a better visualization. By the way, this is a project being designed right now in the department. It's designed by what we call in-house design. So MPW engineers doing the design for this project using BIM. It's a small-scale project for Ministry of Public Works. So having a better visualization of the project, keep in mind that always, or in many cases, the end user who will use the building, or the decision maker and the end user, it doesn't have any engineering background. So it will be much help for him to have a better visualization of the project, especially if we're talking about facades or choosing interior finishes. One important benefit also into implementing BIM is having a better budget estimate during the design phase. We all know that during the design, or by the end of the design, we're supposed to have a budget estimate, especially in the government projects. And there's always a big blame on us that sometimes what we are estimating is not so accurate because of most cases human factor. So after all, a human engineer will do the summation in Excel sheets and making sure the quantities and the unit rates and multiply to each other and to find the project estimate. So using a 3D model with all the information embedded on that model will help us a lot into that issue. Again, one of the main reason delaying projects during design phase is obtaining governmental approvals. In Kuwait, we have the designer supposed to obtain up to 22 governmental approval during the design phase, from municipality, fire brigade, Ministry of Electricity, and many, many governmental entities. And those approval, right now, he's applying for them manually, and the gentleman and the entities reviewing according to standards and codes, and then he's giving his remarks, comments, and eventually approval also manually. So we're trying to convince all the government entities that, well, please, let's work 3D model. Let's work with BIM. We can make all the checks that you need according to the standards and codes that you follows, with using 3D modeling using BIM. So if we could do that, and we convince all our colleagues in all the governmental approvals entities, we're sure that we will save a lot of time in this field. We're trying to avoid something like that, this picture, having a mass room with all the paper drawings. Of course, it's much better for us to have all the information that we need on a hard disk, or even maybe on the cloud, and it will be even environmental friendlier. So those were some of the benefits we're gaining for implementing BIM. Now, what we did according to that? Well, let me tell you, the decision has been taken. We're already implementing BIM into all of our projects under design right now. We started that maybe 2 years ago. So Kuwait, Minister of Public Works, is already using BIM into our projects. We already modified our TOR, term of reference, asking our consultants to work with BIM. At the same time, we signed an agreement with a BIM consultant, with a specialized consultant, a 2-year agreement to help us into implementing BIM into our projects. The agreement is a 2-year agreement, has 6 tasks, main tasks. We already finished the first year of that agreement. I don't think I have enough time to go through all the tasks, but mainly they will provide us with hardware, software, training. It was required from the consultant to train 50 engineers, MPW engineers, into using different softwares, provide us with hardware. They helped us into modifying our TUR and creating what we call EIR that will help us into giving better understanding to the consultants while submitting their proposal for our future projects. Also, it is requested from the consultant to do 2 pilot projects. And one of the projects that I showed you before, the in-house project, is doing through that consultant. They're giving us a pilot project support into implementing BIM into our projects. And we're really looking forward for that contract. Now, so what I'm trying to say here, that we believe that MPW have a major role into giving the market or the delivery methods by mandating latest technologies, raising awareness, and introducing new standards to the market. We did that before for smart buildings. We did it for green buildings, renewable energies, and now we're introducing BIM into our projects. It's a long way to go, but we already started that. That was my presentation for today. Thank you for listening, and I'll be here till the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. BIM adoption from the government's perspective, a very hot topic. 10 years ago, we probably wouldn't be speaking about this topic. Looking at how BIM adoption has progressed during the last couple of years is very exciting. We're seeing more and more interest from governments and authorities like the Ministry of Public Works in Kuwait, keen to implement and adopt BIM. However, I'm focusing at this part of my presentation about the key success factors that can help this adoption and into becoming a more successful adoption. So first, I'm going to just introduce about my company. So we basically do 3 things. We consult organizations, authorities, architects, engineers, and contractors how to best adopt BIM. We develop custom software that automates the BIM process, integrates BIM models with external systems. We also look forward always to implement the latest technology trends into the design and construction workflows. We've been very fortunate to work on many of the iconic projects in the region, and we're very fortunate to work with Engineer Ayman and his team in the ministry, trying to deliver their vision and hopefully a successful BIM adoption. So this is a very big topic, but I will try in the next couple of minutes to quickly target 7 key success factors that needs to be considered in order to achieve a successful BIM adoption. First one, create a BIM strategy. The first thing you need to do is to assign a BIM committee. They will be responsible for more or less taking all related BIM decisions. They will be responsible for creating and generating awareness within the government. They will also contribute in the development of BIM standards. Saying that, it's very vital to make sure that this committee has the relevant authority that will allow it to make these changes. Also, the key and sensitivity of this committee requires that we are very selective in selecting the team members inside the committee. The committee should include experienced staff, people that have been in the government for many years, knows the inside outs and the workflows and processes, innovators that are looking to innovate and do things differently, as well as industry experts that have the experience of doing this earlier. The second point is setting the goals and objectives. Why are we adopting BIM? And that starts with identifying the key areas that we have deficiencies in, and subsequently the areas of improvement. Once that is done, we have to select the most areas that have the biggest impact so that we don't diverse our efforts unnecessarily. We set methods to measure these objectives, and that is very important in order to issue KPIs and measure the BIM adoption success. Also, it's important to have some historical data about previous issues. For example, if I'm putting as a criteria cost overruns, I need to have some historical data about previous projects and how much percentage of the project I had as a cost overrun. If I'm discussing design iterations, I need to measure it in man-hours and see how much hours I spend in design iterations. Having historical data helps us into developing solid case studies later on. And definitely setting a plan and fixed milestones that should be ambitious, of course, but at the same time realistic to achieve. Point number 2, developing local BIM standards. And BIM standards are supposed to be a way of ensuring consistency. Validating how information will be shared, how information will be published, who's responsible for the information, what details is the information required. And that mainly consists of 2 types of documents. A major document, which is the EIR, that explains the goals and the objectives of the government and the expected BIM users. However, that's a high-level document, so it needs to be supplemented with additional sheets and procedure documents that help further develop and explain these objectives. A couple of considerations to make the BIM standards functional. First thing, build on well-known standards, things that people are already used to, LODs, elements classifications. That being said, it is at a lot of points necessary to sort of localize and align these standards to meet internal requirements. Also, considering that these standards are going to be in the hands of a lot of people in the industry, we have to make sure that these standards are quite clear and as well flexible, that allow variance projects and allow also in some areas that the supply chain themselves have some input in these standards. Point number 3, which is also very important, is building in-house competence. Like Engineer Ayman has explained, that they were very smart into deciding to have 50 engineers within the ministry being trained, and we can actually level that into 3 different levels. A very high level, which is the BIM committee, that required to have a very high level of BIM competence due to their sensitive role. However, engineers in the government that are not in the BIM committee need to have a minimum fundamental level of BIM knowledge, because in the projects they're going to be experiencing some BIM requirements. For example, evaluating project-specific requirements and challenges, assessing tenderers and designers that are bidding for projects. They need to assess their BIM competence, so they definitely need to have their own BIM competence as well. Engaging in BIM design reviews and approvals. Also, we have to consider if there are other authorities in the chain of the design approval and design approvals and reviews. They need to have a minimum level of awareness as well. And the BIM knowledge is in 2 parts: knowledge of the tools and the technology, and knowledge of the standards that have been developed at the earlier stage. Point number 4, executing BIM pilot projects. And a pilot project is an early project before the wide rollout of the BIM, where we explore and invest time in order to enhance our standards. So we mainly execute pilot projects for 3 reasons. First, leveraging the BIM competency of the team. Training only is not sufficient. Again, building a case, and it's much better to build a case based on a physical project and measured outcomes than just theoretical assessments. Number 3, validate and, if necessary, enhance the BIM standards that have been developed. Now, the pilot project is a very key milestone into the success of the whole BIM adoption cycle. So selecting the right pilot project is very critical. So here are some considerations to consider when selecting the pilot project. Number 1, you have to start with a new project, definitely. Never start with project in between. Number 2, it has to be a reasonably sized project. It cannot be a very small project. It cannot be a very long-term project, because you will have a long time before exploring the benefits of BIM. It has to be of some significant importance to give the case a better image. And most importantly, you have to avoid projects that already have other high risks and challenges, like political challenges or financing challenges. Because if that project fails and it was the first project that BIM was adopted in, definitely BIM will be blamed for that. And last point, it's worthwhile to consider early adopters, consultants, designers, contractors, into these pilot projects that are already willing and happy to innovate and to implement BIM. Number 5, changing the mindset. And from my personal perspective, this is the most important point. Although it has nothing to do directly with the BIM technology and methodologies, but it actually paves the road whether the BIM adoption will be successful or will fail. And unfortunately, there's a lot of individuals and organizations in the construction industry are trapped in very old-fashioned methodologies. Example of being current contracts that encourage conflicts rather than collaboration. For a contractor to justify his claim, he needs to prove that the designer was wrong, and the designer needs to prove that the contractor was wrong. In this environment, you don't expect that BIM will act as a functional collaborative platform. You have to fix the environment first for BIM to be functional. Isolating the design from the construction requirements, again building a gap and opening a window for an enormous amount of RFIs, variations, and claims. Communication methods. You have to issue hard copies for every single question you need to ask. You have to wait for 21 days to receive an answer for a simple question, based on contract templates that have been developed 30 years ago when there was no internet or even mobile phones. At that time, this method seemed logical. Today, this method is not logical. Also, setting grown targets for the project participants. For example, you don't expect someone will be optimizing the design if he's getting paid his fees based on a percentage of the project cost. It's simply conflicting. Again, evaluating the value of the work done by a contractor, mainly based only on the amount of material consumed and not considering at all the amount of material saved. It will be very surprising on that contract to see a contractor willing to do some design and value engineering in order to deduct his own fees. So these things actually, although they are not directly BIM related, but they directly impact the BIM success in the project. So we have to think in a bit different way. We have to introduce new collaborative construction contracts. These encourage team collaboration. You have joint risks, you have joint benefits. If the project is a success, everyone wins. If the project fails, everyone loses. You have to engage early contractors and specialty suppliers in the design stage, facilitate more collaborative cooperation. This hopefully will reduce, and we target to even eliminate the requirement of RFIs, variations, and change orders later on. If you have this environment, BIM definitely will be successful. Point number 6 is leveraging the BIM users. It's just putting BIM and new technologies in a more formal context. For example, using BIM and VR for design reviews and approvals, or using BIM and collaboration system as the formal means of communication instead of using hard copies and paperwork. Or, for example, using BIM and 4D in official planning reviews instead of reviewing thousands of schedule and lines of activities that probably no one will be able to validate or even understand. So putting BIM in this formal context helps leverage and even amplify the value of BIM and the success of BIM on projects. So my last point, and definitely not the least, is directing the market. If you don't have in the industry organizations that are BIM competent and are able to deliver these requirements, then the BIM adoption will not be successful as well. And the governments and authorities, they have a role and they have the influence to help the market do this transformation. I'm going to list here 3 points. First one is definitely the most direct one, which is legislation, or in a simpler term, a BIM mandate. But we have to consider as well that we have to consider an adequate time frame. You have in the industry organizations that have thousands of employees. They cannot change within overnight. So there needs to be an adequate time frame to give the space for these organizations to adapt. At some instances, we need to even stage the mandate into project types, so start with large-scale projects and then scale it down, or even by BIM requirements, by choosing small BIM requirements and then scaling it up. Point number 2, and that's incentivizing the market by conveying BIM as a requirement, either through tenders of government projects or through conveying the message that BIM competent companies will be taken, BIM competence will be taken as a key criteria of selection. Of course, it cannot be the sole criteria of selection, but being a key criteria of selection will help organizations justify the investment that they're going to do in order to adopt BIM, because they know this investment can help them with more projects. Final point is spreading the awareness, either through publications, through public speeches like this one, regular project meetings, even directing the academic researchers into that direction. But it really helps the industry, and the industry receives that very well, and they always look at the government to see where the government is heading. So these are 7 key factors of success for adopting BIM from the government perspective. I hope that was informative, and thank you very much.